Hello, everyone. Today we have a good show for you. But before we move forward, I want to first of all correct an episode that was recorded earlier on, and it has to do with body language. So you see, when we rewatch the video, it's gonna be a dichotomy of generation or battles of generation, right? So we have the boomers, the millennials, and Gen Zs, right? And Gen Alpha coming over, right? So I would say Alpha, Z, and Millennials, we watched this video and we interpreted it in one way. But when I sent a clip from my editors to reviewers, I got a message that said the video is misrepresenting his body language. That his body language wasn't, I'm not going to do anything. His body language was saying, that's what I'm doing, in a sarcastic way. So there was a miscommunication going on in terms of body language. So we'll play the video one more time and we will see where the mistake came from and we can move on. Numerous times she was very gracious in moving on to respect the conversation and respect the debate, but people that are older than me with 20 and 30 years, what they're telling me is the shrugging of his shoulder like this was more of a that's what I'm doing, duh, because he spoke about the banking, he spoke about other things that well, I wouldn't call it implementing, they're planning to implement, and then I think before then, he was already talking about how good of a job he had done in Lagos State and boasting at his right that Lagos is the fifth largest economy in Africa. So that's the whole point they were trying to interpret what he said. So be it as it may, I have to believe his generational people because it was a peer review comment and the person had no reason to lie about it. And one thing you will know about the Nigerian culture, right? Especially those that have visited and lived in the culture. Yeah, a lot like communication is really, really in a sarcastic way, but it's not to be rude. It's just how the communication goes, right? So it's almost like you could meet someone at the dining and the person is eating and you're trying to kick off a conversation and you're like, hey, what's up? Are you eating? And then the person is going to look at you like, no, I'm not. I'm dancing. So the person is not being rude. The person is like, why are you asking me a question that you can see me do? So moving on. Olu, do you have anything to add to the conversation?
Well, thank you very much for that. For me personally, body language can be interpreted differently, but I want to strongly believe that it shows that cluelessness. That's what I believe. And the older generation who said that what was doing, that the body language implied that that was what was doing, they were wrong. And if you check it very well, they must be one of the APC apologists. Even when the president is making some blunders, some people will clap for him. So now, for what he did there, that body language shows that he is clueless about it. In terms of commodity exchange, our president is doing nothing about that. Everybody knows that. The only thing we can say.
Well, the question is the body language, right? We'll get into the economy, right? When we start the covering. The question is the body language. And I'm with you. I interpreted it the way you interpreted it. But the people that were asked, trust me, they are not, I do not know their political affiliation. I strongly believe they are not standing in for APC or something.
Okay, well, if you say that, then again, we can actually fact check. We can fact check. So if you say that, okay, the body language implies that, oh, that's what I'm doing, then check. For the past 3 years of this administration, has he done anything in that direction? So it's a thing you can ask. So has he done anything in that direction?
No, that's a fair point. That's a very fair point.
So if he's doing it, there's a fact. Is there any fact? We can Google search it. We can search everywhere. So it's not something, oh, he's doing it. Then where's the evidence of doing it? So that's another thing. Body language can say something, but we can actually fact check. To what extent is he doing anything about this commodity exchange? You know, we have to go beyond rhetorics. And that's why the interviewer was very clear. Most of African journalists, they don't probe our politicians deeply. They take them for their words, and nothing happens again. So the woman was saying that, oh, what you are the biggest country in the Africa. What are you doing about it? So if it's doing okay, well, I've started this, there's a committee. Is there any committee on ground? So that means, I think maybe one thing we can do for this one is that maybe you can have your team to research and to comb the internet. Is Nigerian government doing anything about this commodity exchange? Let's look at that. So we can have a fact base. So we can now come back and say, well, body language can say something, but factually, for the past 3 years of this regime, there is no iota of truth that even there is no single committee that's been set up. So that's one thing I want us to do, to just finalize. We should not just say, okay, based on something. So let's go to fact. Let's do that research. All right, thank you.
No. That's good. That's good. Well, in today's topic, we're going to talk about fire, freedom, frequency, right? From the war with Dangote and the fuel crisis, we're going to go all the way to African continental free trade area. So it's a fun show. There's a common saying that my mom and my dad usually say when we're growing up, right? A man who controls the flow of money, right, controls the heartbeat of the market. So in this case, in terms of Dangote, it's going to be the man who controls the flow of fuel, controls the heartbeat of the Nigerian market or African market, and the man who controls that market controls the destiny of the people. Because nothing can happen without fuel in the nation. And today, or of recent, there's been a war between Dangote and in the issue of fuel. So I'll give a brief history in terms of background. In 1956, Shell discovered oil in Bayelsa State, in Olubiri community. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, but in Bayelsa State, Nigeria. And hence the whole Nigeria as an oil country began. The story began at that point. By 1977, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, was established, and it was created as a state takeover of oil production, or the state regulator of oil production. That company does a whole lot of things. Trust me, it's just not regulatory, but that's a topic for another day. By 1989, Nigeria had 4 public refineries, which is supposed to be under the management of the NNPC. So Nigeria actually built 4 refineries because they got tired of sending crude abroad and bringing and importing fuel. In 2003, I clearly remember this like yesterday, because that was one of the period where I was understanding economics. I was maybe a junior, that's 300 level. And Nigerian import of fuel got to a paradox point where the country was falling on an import, on a net export deficit. The reserves were down. And for lack of a better word, a lot of people wanted the subsidies to leave. Like, this was the period where the idea of getting rid of the fuel subsidy came up. And there were a lot of riots, and there were a lot of kofifi going on, and the subsidy stayed. Long story short. By 2021, Dangote began the construction of Africa's largest refinery, with the aim of to produce 650 barrels of oil, of crude a day. By 2024, that factory was commenced, and it began producing crude and started meeting the domestic supply and domestic demand of the Nigeria economy. And that is the point. His argument is, if my refinery meets the domestic demand of the Nigerian people, why is the federal government still giving license for foreigners to still compete with him? Again, I'm paraphrasing. By 2026, this year, right now, Dangote sues the federal government over import license, and the battle for the pump is now in the courts. So the main aim of this conversation, and Ayo, you can step in at any point now. The main point of this conversation is the ordinary Joe is suffering. Gas price is high, and now they're fighting about licenses. As of recent, domestic refinery shares in Nigeria supplies 76.7% of the total petrol demand as of the first quarter of 2026. And that is up from 45% from last year. So that is a huge improvement in the Dangote refinery and what they can produce. On an average, import of refined crude oil has fallen by 60.2% in the same time. So as Dangote's refinery is meeting the demand of the domestic pump, the foreign exporters, or in our case, we importing foreign gas, has started to decline. But here's the dichotomy. A liter of fuel is about to hit 2,000 naira, which some people say they're already buying the liter of fuel for 2,000 naira, or even more than 2,000 naira. So we're talking about areas like in Onitsha and in Imo State. Those guys are way above 2,000 naira a liter of fuel already. So the rest of the states are just catching up. So what say you with everything that's going on in the petroleum, in the battle of the fuel?
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ejiro, for this conversation and for bringing it on board. And I think basically the question about Dangote and the regulators, the NNPC, the challenge here, the first thing we have to ask is that Dangote hasn't been able to meet the total oil requirements in the country. The answer is no. That's the first thing. Because if Dangote can supply all the demand for local consumption, then there is no basis for issuing new licenses. Then, if the federal government is issuing new licenses, we should ask the question, are they granting subsidies to these importers? That's the second question. You have to be objective. I'm a Dangote fan. I support Dangote industrialization. So for me, I would say that if the importer, let the government give 20,000 import licenses. So far, the federal government is not subsidizing whatever they are bringing in. It's fine. Do you see my logic now? It's fine.
No, I understand. I'm following you. Yeah.
So if the federal government is not subsidizing the importation, it's fine. I'm okay with that. Then again, Dangote, for the fact that he has not been able to meet the local demand for the petroleum consumption, he could not talk. This is not the time for him to talk. So the last time I checked, I think he has not attained 90% of the production capacity, 650,000, 650 barrel. He has not attained that yet. So the moment he can meet, so the first question we have asked ourselves is that what is the daily consumption of petroleum products in Nigeria? Can Dangote supply that? If yes, then you can now say
the daily need is 53.6 million liters a day.
Okay, then what is the Dangote capacity? You know, he has the stock capacity, but the production capacity, what is it?
Okay.
That is in stock capacity meant from production capacity.
Well, there are two things.
Capacity.
Wait, there are two
so
things.
There is a stock capacity. So now say Dangote now, is it fully operational? Is it operating at 100% of his stock capacity?
I'm not at the refinery. I'm reading what his argument is. His argument is he produces 53.6 million liters a day, and Nigeria consumes 51.1 liters a day. And based on that statement, what he's saying is, by buying fuel abroad, despite owning your oil, the crude, and your own refinery that is functioning, is like a farmer selling his harvest and then going to go buy corn. That's his argument. His argument is that his refinery is working, it's moving at full capacity, and he wants to be the one that supplies the Nigerian government fuel. Because his oil are not in those same the European companies that be giving this license. His oil cannot be sold in those same countries because of visible barriers and invisible barriers to enter their market. And so his argument is, why is the Nigerian government making it easy for those guys to come?
Okay, on this point, thank you very much for this background research you did for this conversation. I love this kind of conversation. So for me, on this note, I am totally for Dangote. So what is going on then is that they are the rent seekers. So if you encourage private investors to put up a factory here, and at the same time you are granting licenses, that means you are sabotaging the person who is investing
That's the
here.
exact. That's his exact. That is where he's heading.
And that's the fact. So and federal governments, one thing they are not doing right, and that's why I'm saying that I don't trust Nigerian politicians. I trust what they are doing. But like the other time we were talking about Tinubu, say, is he doing it? Is he already? He say the body language shows that I was doing it. No, we don't take them for what they say. Now, if they can do that to Dangote, they are actually telling foreign investors that look, if you come to Nigeria, they will sabotage you. If they can do that to their fellow citizens. So because now we are seeing a momentum that now Dangote is actually trying to activate industrialization of the continent. People are saying it, and that was the one Dangote quote I love to share. He said, "When you invest in your country, you will give a white man confidence to come here, but you cannot be say I'm looking for foreign investors and you are doing nothing about it." So you start with you say charity begins at home. If you believe in your economy, invest in it. So what they are doing to Dangote, and I think President Tinubu should come in, and I trust Dangote. Let me tell you something. I trust Dangote. Dangote is going to write to the president directly. I trust him. If nothing is done now, because the court process can be polluted and be corrupted. But what I'm saying is that if they are doing this one to Dangote, they're actually going to discourage foreign investors in other sectors, not only in the petroleum, in any sector they go. And investors have been saying that in Nigeria they have a policy inconsistencies. So I want to invest in your country, you are changing the policy. They don't want that. They want stability. So you cannot, in one hand, be giving private licenses to refine, and at the same time ask people to be importing. And again, so Dangote will have to be exporting his products overseas to go and sell, and he cannot even sell in those markets. So for me, I think Dangote has every right to sue them to court, and I'm very confident that he's going to win the case. Unless
that's up to the jury system and what they say. But here's Dangote's argument. The Petroleum Industry Act of 2021 permits imports only when domestic supply is insufficient. So that's what he's standing on. So that's his main pillar of his loss. On the flip side, the Depot and Petroleum Product Marketers Association of Nigeria said a private refinery should not be mandating what they should do. And they're also complaining about if he's the only supplier, then he's now a monopoly. So right now, in any textbook, any economics textbook you would read, they would say for one private person to be a monopoly, it's a bad thing. They want competition. So that's the next ground that the government is saying that, yes, we want you to succeed. We want you to grow. We want your refinery to do well and be the pride of Africa. But we want it in a perfectly competitive market and not in a monopoly market.
You are changing the narrative. You are changing the narrative anyway.
I'm not changing the narrative. I'm just reading. I'm reading both sides of their argument.
Okay. Thank you very much. The federal government, their case has no basis. There is no basis for comparison. Monopoly. Monopoly is when there is a single operator. So those marketers, they should become refiners. They should create refinery by themselves
inside Nigeria economy.
Yes, because again, the last time I checked, Dangote was not the only person who was given license to refine. It was not the only one person. It's not the only person. About 10 of them. So the marketer, the business has changed. So the same government, I said, well, I want competition. I agree with you. In a monopoly, it will determine the price and dominate the market. Agreed. So the government will say, well, in this case, there is no sense importing petroleum again. The marketers should change them. Say, how do we now start our own refinery and compete against Dangote? So in that case, if Dangote now has 5 other refineries in Nigeria, it will monopolize the market. So the definition of monopoly is what's called on the same level, the same playing ground. Somebody is import, somebody refine. There is no competition there. So they are not operating the same markets. All right. So the point is that somebody has an advantage of bringing the cheap and something from overseas, flood the market for somebody refining locally. All right. So you come and refine locally, then you cannot compete. And again, let me now say something again. It's very funny that we are living in this kind of country. Don't forget that oil producing country should have a government monopoly. If you cast thank God for the historical background. NNPC historically has monopoly for refining the petroleum. It was their failure. It was their failure
of the four refineries or lack of maintenance of the four refineries that this came in. Yes, that is a fair point.
Let me also tell you something. When Obasanjo was leaving the government in 2007, he gave Dangote the opportunity to manage the NNPC refineries, like a government-private partnership.
Okay.
Obasanjo gave him the concession. It's in the news. Now, when Yar'Adua came in, these guys again who are saying marketers, they went to Yar'Adua and said, don't allow him to run NNPC refinery for us. We can do it. So Yar'Adua revoked it. When Yar'Adua revoked it, Dangote now said, okay, don't worry, if they don't want me to run it for them, because I can run it efficiently. If not, I'm going to create my own. That was at the point when Dangote said he wants to start his own refinery from the scratch. Dangote's intention was not to start any refinery, it was to manage NNPC refineries. So again, you look at Saudi Arabia, look at least 10 oil producing countries. All of them, they refine what people are consuming. It is the duty of the government to refine for local consumptions, and again to even export. So it's their failure. Somebody is coming to clean up your mess, and you are still blaming the person for cleaning it up. So don't clean it. Do you understand? So for me, the Dangote has this one that says, the competition. What I would say is that let them grant license to 10 refinery operators in Nigeria. So the marketers should change their business model to become what? Petrol refinery. Of course, Dangote was a license already. And Otedola was very clear. Otedola said earlier, I used to import petroleum products to Nigeria. But when Dangote came on board, I know that this business model is dead. The business model is dead. Even with or without subsidy, those guys, they have their easy agenda. Now they are sabotaging the national economy. So government should be, for me, if they are using monopoly arguments against Dangote, grant new licenses for people to refine, not licenses to import.
Yes.
Licenses to refine, no license to import.
Yeah, that's a fair take. The licenses. So, if I would have I would have recommended that Dangote's argument also said, listen, I'm not against, I hear your side about the monopoly, but the question is, even if you want foreign people to compete against me, they should refine it inside our economy, and they should provide jobs for the people in the country. So whether you're a Nigerian citizen that you're trying to start your refinery, or you're a Brit or an American, or wherever European country you're coming from, or Asian country, build a refinery in Nigeria, hire workers in Nigeria, and then sell it to Nigerians. I would say that. But on a lighter note, what can Nigerians do to solve this problem? Other than, we've spoken about the kofifi that's going on between the two parties, but what can Nigerians do? I would say have an independent price regulation board that is a watchdog to see why the prices of fuel keeps going up and down, just as they have the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. They should open a similar commission like that for gas prices. Because the whole economy functions on gas. Without that, nothing will happen. Without that, nothing would happen. Another idea will be transparency in import license data. Let's see who is getting these licenses, how long the licenses are going to last, and what does the license permit them to do. Right? Because again, it's all about accountability. There's this argument of there are 6 new licenses, but when you try to search what the 6 new licenses says and what is to do, you have no idea. All you know is that there are 6 new licenses. So the transparency is not there unless maybe I didn't search well, but I have no idea what the licenses says that they're to do. Another way forward is for invest in the pension fund, right? The Nigerian pension fund should invest in Dangote's IPO. That is, every Nigerian that has a pension, both in the government and those that are working in the market, everybody should have an opportunity to enjoy the refinery and get, so that they see this oil when they go to the gas pump and they buy it, they know that, okay, I have a share in this. And then most importantly, the Petroleum Industry Act should be enforced. Establish a fast track energy court. Because a lot of people were, as I was researching on this, a lot of people were saying the only reason they're taking this to court is just to slow Dangote down and destroy him in court. Because there's a new tactics that have been going on for the last 20 years. The process is the punishment. The time you spend trying to prove your point is the punishment. So even if you end up proving your point, he would have lost 3 to 5 years that he would not be able to compete because he took a loan. So each day the clock ticks, he has interest being paid. So the more they drag this in court, the more they punish him. So the court process is literally the punishment to kick him out. So those would be my 4 recommendations in everything that is happening. And the federal government says, yes, no, you can come in. The federal government says they have the best interest of the people. Dangote says he has the best interest of the people. They've gone to court. Bring it out. Let's read the document. Let's see what is being said.
Okay, I think before we wrap it up, I think for me, what I would say is that your recommendations are okay and fantastic. But the question, it still boils down to the question is that why importing what you are exporting? Why? That's the fundamental question. So importing should not just come in here. It's a value creation. And Dangote was very correct. Let's give licenses for many people to refine at home to create jobs. That's what we are looking for. All right, so I think in the narrative, forget any importing licenses. And Dangote was very clear, of course. Dangote started his business model by importing. He was importing cement, he started manufacturing cement. He was importing sugar, he started manufacturing sugar. So you understand it. He was a trader. Dangote was a trader before he became an industrialist. He was a trader before he became an entrepreneur. So you understand it that when he was buying, he buy sugar overseas and bag it as Dangote sugar. He stopped that. He now bought sugarcane plantation where he transformed this sugarcane into what? Sugar. So you understand the value chain. So that's the point. So in this narrative, your recommendation is okay. I agree with you. But the point is that importation license should not just enter the narrative now. It should not. In fact, you know what? Other African countries, they are looking up to Nigeria. They're looking up to Dangote. He was in Tanzania. They gave him like a head of state. He was in Kenya. So for me now, if Dangote enters South Africa, they will welcome him more than they welcome our president. When he was in Kenya, of course, but tell me one person who understands. That's the game plan. So and I think I'm out before I go now because I need to drop this on here. Let's think of how we can transform our resources into job. That's the fundament. A resource-rich continent cannot be raising jobless folks. And again, in Africa now, they said youthful population. So that means if in terms of what's it called? Factors of production, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. We have everything. The land is there. The capital is there. Somebody say we don't have capital. Is it wrong? That's the economics textbook. They told us land. If you have a land, you have the capital because in the economics textbook, one of the fallacious assumptions is that land is just a land. Land is just a land. Under the land, we have resources. The capital is there under your feet. So if you have 10 acres of land, and under the 10 acres of land, we have a gold inside of one of them. Get the gold, sell the gold, use the money from that one too. That is there. So they say,
I totally agree.
Okay, look at National Assembly in Abuja was built by crude oil. He gave Julius Berger go and take crude oil. They built it. He didn't pay them in dollars. But in economics textbook, classical economics, they didn't consider that land is not just a land. Land has resources inside of it that you can use. Even let's say land is a land itself. Let's say you have 10 acres of land. You have all the factors of production, but you are lacking capital. Now, the land you have 10 acres, sell 2 acres. The money from the 2 acres, use it to invest on the 8 acres. People do that. People sell their father's house to go to UK, to go to Germany. That's it. So land is there in Africa. Every family has a family land. Now, so what is lacking in Africa is entrepreneurship. That's my last point I'm leaving here. Among all the factors of production, we have everything in Africa. What is lacking is entrepreneurship. Transforming, mobilizing all the resources together, human and natural resources. That's what is lacking. So importer, they are rent seekers. They are collecting rents from each. They are not actually creating value. So that's what Dangote is trying. Because Dangote was there. Dangote made his money as importer. He was importing cement. He now started manufacturing. He understands it. So and he said it. He said it. I want to be the pioneer industrialist in Africa. That he was very careful. So it's not about when you not mention that and let them give purpose for importing licenses. We don't even need importation. And again, if you are importing now, they're actually demarketing Dangote. They're demarketing him because he's already a star in East Africa. In Central Africa now, they are inviting him. In Ethiopia, this is the mega star already. They are inviting him. They don't invite our president to come. So I think the conclusion is that, which I personally have dedicated in the past 4 months of thereabout, I've been focusing on Dangote as an iconic example. Let's celebrate our entrepreneurs, not our politicians. So that's my take now. So I hope maybe next time we come up again, we are going to have this. Thank you for the invitation. I enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that other subsequent ones we can have more robust discussion like this. Thank you so much.
All right. So we'll end this topic with this, right? When the crude oil flows from your soil but is refined outside and then imported in, you have not gained independence. And I think that's the point that Odo has been making, and that's the point that Dangote has been making. That Nigeria is still trying to gain its independence. And Nigeria needs its independence of resources and energy. It's embarrassing to have power outage in the country, and it's very embarrassing with the whole apartheid system of sharing power and internet bandwidth down in the country. And with the new licenses, the argument is you're just merely changing who is your colonizer. From direct to indirect or induced is still the same thing. As long as the people do not benefit from the refinery and the crude, you have no power. You have no negotiating power on the world stage. And that is a major problem.